and welcome to our YouTube video. This is the first in a series on IFRS hot topics, and we're going to talk to you today about the replacement of IBORs. I'm Sandra Thompson. I lead our global financial instruments technical team for IFRS, and I'm here today with Randall, who works in our UK IFRS technical team and helps many of our UK clients with financial instruments issues. Now we're going to talk to you today about the replacement of IBORs, interbank offer rates. In the wake of the financial crisis and due to regulatory reforms, IBORs are being replaced pretty much in all areas of the world. So in the UK, LIBOR is going to be replaced with SONIA, but equivalent replacements are happening in the US for US dollar LIBOR, in Canada for Canadian LIBOR, in many parts of Asia, and in Europe for Euribor. And we're going to focus today on the accounting consequences of the switchover. Now I should say up front that this is an emerging issue. It's one where there's still a state of fluidity. Different territories are going at different speeds, and the actual way in which the replacement and switch will happen is in many cases still uncertain. So what we're going to give you today is our latest thinking, but it is very much a watch this space. Now the first area I'm going to talk about is what do you need to know for 2018 year ends? What's the most immediate impact? And I think the biggest accounting question is one to do with hedge accounting. This is probably best illustrated with an example. Suppose I'm a company that has issued variable rate debt, a UK company, and that variable rate debt is linked to LIBOR, and that variable rate debt goes out to 2030, so into the period beyond which LIBOR is expected to be replaced. Let's suppose also that I've taken out an interest rate swap to swap that debt to fixed, and I've designated that as a cash flow hedge. The question is, can that cash flow hedge accounting continue? One of the criteria for cash flow hedge accounting is that hedge cash flows need to be highly probable. And there is a technical argument that there are not highly probable LIBOR-linked cash flows all the way out to 2030. If LIBOR is replaced in, say, 2021, then the period beyond that replacement doesn't have LIBOR highly probable cash flows anymore. So therefore, you might think perhaps hedge accounting has to be discontinued. Well, the good news is we think at 2018 year ends that is not the answer, and that you can carry on with hedge accounting. Our rationale is if you look out to 2030, there still are highly probable cash flows, and they're highly probable variable cash flows. They might not be LIBOR linked. They will, beyond 2021, say, be linked to, say, SONIA, which is the expected replacement in the UK. But if you look at the intended replacement mechanism, the intent is that that replacement will happen on equivalent terms that are fair to both parties. So although previously the company may have had cash flows that were LIBOR plus a spread of X, and they may move to being SONIA plus a different spread of Y, the idea is that LIBOR plus X will be equivalent to SONIA plus Y. They're essentially equivalent cash flows, although differently badged. Furthermore, if you look out in forward markets today, the market is pricing based off LIBOR all the way out to 2030 and indeed beyond. And indeed those LIBOR markets are presently much more liquid than the replacement SONIA markets, so you can still test effectiveness, for example. So for all those reasons, we think it is acceptable to carry on with hedge accounting at 2018 year ends. So that's the good news. Mark, what else should companies be thinking about for 2018?
Thanks, Sandra. I think the other key thing I would highlight for 2018 financial reporting is thinking about disclosures. The requirements vary between jurisdictions, but in many territories there's a requirement to have front half disclosures that address the risks and look out over a longer period in terms of what's relevant to the company. And so when preparing those types of disclosures, thinking about what should be said about the phase out of LIBOR and the other interbank offer rates is certainly something that entities should be thinking about. And certainly for banks and major financial institutions who might have billions of contracts referencing LIBOR and the other reference rates, this is probably something really to be thinking about. The other step to be taking now is in terms of the broader implementation, thinking about inventorizing the contracts to understand where you've got dependencies on LIBOR, staying close to the teams with institutions, looking at the more entity-wide implications of LIBOR, and making sure that accounting teams are understanding what changes are being anticipated and are reflecting on what the accounting implications might be for those, so that there aren't any unintended consequences, which could be the case if people are making changes in a quick fashion and not fully thinking through. That really is a segue through to what might some of the more medium-term areas of focus be.
So back to hedge accounting, my favourite topic. So I talked a few minutes ago about 2018, Let's now move on. Let's suppose I'm in the UK, my UK company with its LIBOR-based debt, and we're in the period when LIBOR is actually replaced, which in the UK is probably going to be broadly 2021, so we're in 2021. And as I said, the company has applied hedge accounting, and let's suppose they documented their hedge in terms of IBOR, so they had documented LIBOR cash flows and they're hedging LIBOR risk. The question is, what happens in 2021 when LIBOR is no longer the reference rate? Well, clearly the hedge documentation needs to change because it's not LIBOR anymore. In the UK it's likely to be SONIA, and to reference SONIA, not LIBOR. What impact does that have on hedge accounting? Well, normally if you change your designated hedged item, your hedging instrument, or your hedge risk, that will cause you to discontinue hedge accounting. So you'd have to stop hedge accounting for that old hedge relationship, designate a new hedge and start again with a fresh hedge relationship, which can give rise to more ineffectiveness. And this is the debate we're currently having, is do you have to do that in the case when LIBOR is replaced? Now, it's fair to say there is an ongoing debate. The ISB is aware of this issue and has started a research project, and this is one of the items they're likely to consider. So it is very much a watch this space. There is a very strong view that that is not the most sensible approach in the case of a wholesale reform of replacing LIBOR with, say, SONIA and other similar replacements. So we will see what emerges, but there is a strong view that the most sensible answer would be just to allow that hedge accounting to continue. So that's the first question. Mark, anything else on the accounting front in 2021?
Yes, Sandra, I think the other key issue we've been discussing is where you have a bond or a loan or another cash instrument that currently references an IBOR such as LIBOR, and that changes for the same reasons a hedge documentation would need to change. How do you account for that change to the contract? The consensus very much seems to be that the most appropriate accounting would be account for that just as an ongoing variation in the cash flows that's accounted for prospectively. Just as any on any floating rate instrument, if there's a change in the rate, then that's accounted for prospectively. The alternative view, which you could take given some of the guidance in IFRS 9, is that there should be an immediate modification gain or loss, which will be calculated by discounting the new cash flows or the expectation of them at the original effective interest rate. But I think there the challenge is that that original effective interest rate would itself be based on LIBOR. And if LIBOR has been phased out at this point in time and either doesn't exist or is very unclear what the future LIBOR rates would be, that feels like a calculation that is going to be kind of, in terms of reliability, might really not be particularly credible. And so for that reason, most seem to think that accounting that prospectively will be the way ahead, but as similarly, for the hedge accounting, that's where there is ongoing industry debate and dialogue with the standard setters.
Thank you, Mark. So those are the two biggest accounting impacts. There will be some other accounting impacts when the actual time of the change comes. In particular, there are many measurements in accounting that use IBOR as an input, so many discounting measurements that have IBOR as part of the discount rate, and fair value methodologies, again, where an IBOR is an input to that methodology. Those will need to be updated. I think in accounting terms that's not particularly problematic or difficult. However, it could have some quite widespread systems implications, so it's one to watch out for. So just to summarise, we've given you a bit of flavour about what replacement IBORs is all about. We've talked about 2018 year ends, the fact that we think cash flow hedge accounting can continue, that's the good news, but also to look out for disclosures, and as Mark mentioned, to start thinking about inventorising your contracts and the implications it will have on you. When we move forward to the period of replacement, there are two key accounting open questions at the moment. One to do with hedge accounting, one to do with how you actually account for the change for a cash instrument, a debt instrument, and then the need to think about other measurements that include IBORs. And that, as we said, is very much an emerging area. It's a watch this space. We'll update you as things develop. Thank you very much for watching our video, and I hope you watch us again next time we have an IFRS Hot Topics subject. Bye-bye.